In 15 years of working with founders and visionary leaders, almost no one has ever been given a real filter for when to push and when to ease off. There's plenty of permission, but very little discernment. The default setting everywhere that I've seen, the self-help aisle, and even much of the somatic world is one instruction. Hey, it's okay to take the pressure off. Rest, recover. Be gentle with yourself. And sometimes that's exactly right. But other times it is the worst possible advice because sometimes the pressure you're feeling, it isn't burnout at all. It isn't time to rest. It's a threshold. It's the exact moment that you're being asked to become someone larger. And so easing off, it doesn't heal you. It just delays you. So how do you tell the difference? How do you know whether your body is saying stop or stay or saying stay? That is what this video is for. Now, the standard advice is to trust your body. What feels right is right. And to the trained, sure. They've calibrated a relationship of pristine trust with themselves while also creating extraordinary aims. They know their signals. They know when their mind and body is feeding them a BS story. They know their edge, how far they can actually go without breaking. And you can start by a really simple frame, which is essentially by listening to my own inner wisdom. Has that gotten me where I want to go? Do I have the creations that I want to create? Do I have a track record behind me of real artifacts that I have created and expressed in the world? Am I who I said I wanted to become years ago? If not, and you've been taking your foot off the gas and just resting, listening to yourself, well, maybe this video is for you after all, right? So if you are mid-build on something that deeply matters to you, something that's asking all of you, even parts of yourself that you've never had to develop before, then you already know this question that I'm talking about, when to push, when to ease off, because it shows up, at 2 a.m. and it sounds like this. Oh my gosh, am I just burned out? Does all this even matter anymore? Or am I being asked to push forward? So stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll be able to answer that better. And I'll show you how the trained get that way. Because it's not a personality trait, it's a practice. And I'm going to give you one of the exact pairings that we use. Okay, pause. Before we get into the topic of today, I have something that I forgot to mention, and this is incredibly important. It's relevant to the topic. The fall season of The Prestige, our Academy for Performance Somatics, it opens in 2 weeks. It's particularly relevant for those of you who are poised on the edge of your next evolution. During the season, members will experience 4 events. These are designed to build them as living legends. The Poison Path, Somatic, Dark Alice, Street Shaman. Themes like mobilizing action against resistance and what we avoid. Connection to all without overwhelm. How breath can literally sculpt our experience in life, and how seeing truth, even when it doesn't conform to what you expected, is what unlocks true power. These events are somatic simulators, so they're training in how you adapt under pressure, novelty, and surprise in a way that feels like edgy play, but you walk out with embodied insights and access to more range than you didn't have going in. Plus, every season membership includes access not only to these 4 events, but our coaching circles, where what you experienced at an event gets applied to your particular life, your business, your aims in a way that makes all the difference. And each member gets access to an Oracle's Edge. This is a private-led, full psychosomatic diagnostic process that our people call soul exposing. And it keeps delivering results, even up to a year later. And last but not least, you'll be linking arms with a crew of formidables who build, risk, and who are hell-bent on leading extraordinary lives. So Whether you are looking for professional expansion or personal evolution, we've got you. Registration closes soon and we roll out the new season in under 2 weeks. So don't sleep on this. Reach out and we'll send you the specs and we'll find out together whether this season is right for the both of us. All right, with that, back to the topic at hand. Here's how we're going to do it. There are 3 states that get lumped together under the word burnout, and each asks for a completely different response. I'm going to name these states and then we're going to go into them in depth. So, state number 1, depletion. This is where rest is actually the answer. State number 2 is drift, where a course correction is the answer. And I'll give you the test that we use, something that we call the artist leader spectrum. And then state number 3, threshold, where the answer is paradoxically pressure, held correctly. This is the one that nobody teaches, and it's where most people will lose years of their life. So we're going to walk through each of those states in order, and I'll tell you a story about it, what it looks like when somebody circles or dances over a threshold for about 5 years without crossing it. And then at the end, I'm going to give you the practice pairing that builds the capacity to actually stand at that state number 3, the threshold, without breaking. So let's get into it. State number 1, depletion. Before anything else, we've got to clear the depletion question, because if your tank is actually empty, then nothing else I say today applies. The classic symptoms are a lack of interest in what used to light you up, restlessness, exhaustion with no immediate health explanation. You're just meh, just off. There's no go like there used to be, no spark behind the eyes, no real interest. If you've been in a genuine season of depletion, like caregiving or crisis, sustained overwork with no recovery, then you've got to honor that first, full stop. So the test, genuine depletion needs rest and it responds to rest. So give yourself a real window of recovery. This is passive recovery, but also active recovery. If you're interested in that distinction, drop a comment below and we can discuss it in a future video. But you need a real window of recovery, passive and active. This is actual rest or what recharges you or refuels you. This isn't doom scrolling only on the couch and where you walk away actually feeling worse. And so if you give yourself actual recovery, watch what happens to your appetite for work or learning or activity once again. If rest restored your appetite, it was depletion. So you're done. You rest well, you come back strong. That's how it works. If rest changed very little, if you come back and the flatness is still there, well, maybe the tank wasn't really the problem. So now we're going to move into state number 2. State number 2 is the drift, and this is where I might introduce the artist leader spectrum. So here's what the drift is. A plane flying from LA to New York is off course most of the flight. A degree here, a degree there, nothing dramatic. There's no storm, no engine failure. But if those degrees are compromising in the same way and left uncorrected, a few degrees over enough miles puts you in a completely different city. That's a trajectory. Our lives work the same way. No crisis happened maybe. But a lot of times we're just on our path, we're on a particular trajectory, we are aligned in that moment, but then we start to make little concessions, 100 small but reasonable adjustments. And if these happen in a same pattern, like a same people pleasing or a same overcaution or a same misunderstanding of our skins, our psychosomatic patterning, I'll talk more about that later. If we make these reasonable adjustments, we took on a little more responsibility. We dropped one more practice. We said yes to one more thing that wasn't quite correct. And now we're somewhere that doesn't feel like your life anymore. The color's drained out, and it's not because anything big broke. It's because you drifted. So for founders and leaders, the drift almost always runs in one direction. Either it runs away from the artist or away from the leader. So perhaps you drifted out of the part of your work that made you want the work to begin with, and you just started managing all of the details around it. Before you self-diagnose burnout and just prescribe arbitrary rest, you've got to test for this drift and correct the overall compass heading. If you've drifted too far away from your artistry, it just looks like this. Where could I infuse more creativity once again? Where could I bring more curiosity or aliveness? This is what it means to reconnect with your artistry, the part of your work that maybe you'd even do for free, but don't tell anybody. That may mean, if you're a founder, it may mean getting your hands back into the craft instead of living in just operations and management. But regardless, it means to reconnect with your aliveness, the people, the environments, the fringe interests that you had and how it fueled the real work, the practices that light you up that you've quietly dropped over time. That's one side of the spectrum. The other side of course correcting this is the leadership paradigm. So in the leadership side, this is where you might need to just ask simply, where does my business or where does my life need more leadership? So the first one was, where can I infuse more artistry? Where does it need more leadership? And this is where we're addressing the lax spots, the 2 or 3 situations that you've been avoiding, the overdue conversations, the boundaries that have slowly slipped, or the standard that you stopped holding. And these are small corrections, a few degrees. Either way, artist, leader, this is not necessarily addressing a whole new business, a whole new life. It's simply inviting you to course correct that alignment, lock the structure back into place so that your energy can return. So if that works, if a few corrected degrees bring the color back into your life and who you are and what you're doing in the world, beautiful. You weren't actually burned out, you weren't at a new threshold of reinvention. They were simply misaligned. You drifted, and so you just adjust the heading and then you fly on. I do have a video where we talk about this more, what it means to make trajectory decisions. I'll link it for you below. That would be a good one perhaps to watch after this if you find yourself in this drift category. But let's continue. So if you've made the corrections or you've tried more than once to address artistry, to address leadership, and the flatness or the meh just won't lift, then hear this clearly. The problem isn't your trajectory. You may have outgrown the destination. You may not be depleted. You may not have actually drifted. You may be being called into a threshold. That is state 3, the threshold. A threshold is a time in life when you're being invited to evolve. Your work, your level of contribution, even your identity and the very roles that have made you you up to this point. And here's why it masquerades as burnout. When you're being asked to become something new, someone new, the old life becomes less tasty, less palatable. You can't tolerate what you used to tolerate. You've just lost interest, and it's just because you're starting to have outgrown it. So the flatness that you're feeling, well, it isn't a malfunction of you. It's a summons. But here's the trap, and I want you to hear this line, even if you forget everything else in this video. If you're at a threshold, resistance, signs not to move forward, they masquerade as true signal. Your body is going to feel scared at making a change, uneasy, unable to rest, vulnerable. And your mind, the loyal golden retriever servant that it is, will manufacture perfectly reasonable justifications. You may even call them signs to take the pressure off. It'll give those reasonable justifications at the precise moments when the pressure is the one thing that will carry you through. The self-protective part of you doesn't announce itself like I'm the self-protective part and I'm showing up as fear. It tends to show up like wisdom, like prudence, like listening to your body. And this is exactly where the untrained get lost, because every voice in the wellness aisle is agreeing with the part of you that wants to run. So let me show you what this looks like in real life. And I'm going to tell one story, but I could tell 100 of these stories, because a threshold and pushing through that threshold requires decision, action, skin in the game, potential sacrifice and investment, time, money, energy, and even an identity. All right, so there is a woman I talked to recently, and we call them prestige curious, somebody who resonates deeply with our work and connects and wants to connect with us about training for a season. She'd been sitting on a dream for over 5 years, flirting with it, trying it. But every time that she would truly verbally commit, like I'm in, but not take action after that, not make an investment, not step across, life would hit. So a car would break down and need money. Old work would come calling and she would say yes and then be too busy to look at her dream anymore. She would need to build more financial cushion potentially, or her family would need her. And by the way, nothing wrong with any of those, taken one at a time. But over 5 years, that's not bad luck. That's a pattern. The pattern was walk up to the threshold, feel the call to change, the pressure to change, and then move away from the pressure and actually feel momentary relief. It feels better. That's when you say a no to your dream again and again, but in that moment of the no, it actually feels correct. I feel so much better. Maybe next year, maybe in the future. But it's not real relief because nothing had actually changed. In this instance, she had just kicked the decision down the road again, and then rinse and repeat, right? Walk up to the threshold, feel the pressure, move away from the pressure and feel momentary relief. Years of that. And she wasn't exhausted by her life. She was exhausted by herself. And that's why she came to us. Not to rest, but to finally do something completely different. This is the part that matters for you. So her pattern wasn't random, and it wasn't just a generative or a general character flaw. It was visible clearly in what we call her skin orientation, how her system operates and thinks under pressure. She thought that it was just how it is or how she was or the signs that life was giving. These are unconscious patterns that we are saying are our fate. That's a tongue twister. Unconscious patterns that we mistake as our fate. But really, it's just the pattern of our psychosoma. So she typed as a clear shapeshifter, and once she could see the pattern, she could finally train inside of it instead of being run by it. You have a pattern too, everybody does, and you can see yours the same way that she did in our free diagnostic, the Somatic Skins quiz. It's linked in the description below. It comes with a complimentary ebook, you'll get it over email, and a series of emails after that from us that will show you how this pattern, your pattern, has been running your life specifically under pressure, including at threshold moments, and how to start training different range. Take it after this video. It is the single most potent place to start. Now, I'm not going to lie to you about this state number 3, the threshold. Threshold times will ask more of you. That's a given. You'll be tired. Your identity might dissolve into goo, like a caterpillar in a chrysalis that has to become liquid before it can become wings. And then even then, just take a vacation, take the pressure off. It isn't the answer. You might even feel like your skin's on fire, because recovery isn't the opposite of pressure. Recovery is earned inside of a rhythm of pressure. And that rhythm of pressure is particularly necessary to understand and master when you're in a threshold season. It operates like a flywheel. So high performers or high achievers, they run best on a flywheel. This is really simple. Prepare to do your thing, recover so you can do your thing again. Pretty revolutionary, right? Prepare to do your thing, recover so you can do your thing again, rinse and repeat. And recovery has a job in that flywheel. So it serves the next push. It's the inhale to the exhale of expression, and it's not an escape hatch from the whole game. My beef, personally, my biggest beef with the shelf help industry, pun intended, and honestly much of the somatic community too, is that the main tool on offer is it's okay to take the pressure off. What I almost never see taught is a filter for when to keep the pressure on, right? There's plenty of permission, there's very little discernment around this. Or how to ease in a way that allows a harder push. How to train so that your bandwidth underneath, the you underneath, actually increases. So what felt hard before becomes normal. And you have more in the tank for humor, enjoyment, creativity, relaxation, even when, especially when, you are doing hard things. This brings me to the promise I made you at the start. So remember, the trained ones who can actually trust their body signals. Here's the thing, they weren't born calibrated. Calibration is built, and it's built by experience. But in case you want to shortcut this by about 20 years of hard things, in our work, we also build this thing through a specific pairing. It's a practice and a principle that sits at the very foundation of everything we teach. We call it our substrate, but I'm going to give you two of them particularly for this burnout threshold paradigm. So let me give them to you. The first one is principle number 1, befriending death. We train this through horse stance. But the principle itself and why we call it befriending death, it's not exactly about mortality only. It's about the single most fundamental requirement for transformation. The ability to remain inside an experience that does not immediately resolve. Here's why this matters for everything we've talked about today. A nervous system that is organized around escape. Escape from sensation, escape from pressure, from stillness, escape from uncertainty, cannot read its own signals accurately. It can only react so that it feels any form of pressure and it says escape, escape. And that is the only noise that it's hearing rather than a truer signal. So part of you engages and then part of you negotiates. And part of you has already sort of like left the room and kind of quiet quit. That's the untrained state. And it's why trust your body is useless general advice at the threshold. Because the body that you're trusting already wants to be out the door and not in this crucible anymore. So how do we train it? With one of the oldest tools there is, the horse stance. You can see here it's feet wide, knees bent, spine tall, arms held. It's a body, a structure, a demand that does not move. And you sink into the stance and you stay. And the legs begin to burn and the mind begins to bargain. And every escape excuse lights up. You know? Sound familiar? That's the threshold in miniature. The exact same voices that show up in horse stance are the exact same voices that are going to also show up in life. It's the same trap. Resistance masquerading as a reasonable signal. And the practice is not to conquer the burn only or just outperform it. It's not even to understand it. It's just to stay. Because when your system discovers it can remain inside an uncompromising condition without dissolving or collapsing, something new appears. A stability that is structural, not emotional. This is the first appearance of somatic trust. I can stay here long enough for something real to happen. That sentence is the birthplace of the trained. Next, part 2, the second practice. This is actually in our substrate. This is the third one. These are all threshold principles, but it's you are the asset. And this is trained through slow breathing. Because staying in horse stance or staying in something where you would rather leave is only half of the pairing. A system that can endure and just grit with tension is strong. But its stability is borrowed from its ability to endure, right? So from circumstance, from structure, from the moment. So when pressure rises, eventually just holding enough tension is going to exhaust you. And that's where you need this. You are the asset. Here's what it means. Your capacity to stay in something difficult is only useful if you can stay without depleting, or you know how to resource again. So if your system can generate its own resource rather than needing to control the environment around it, you develop interior sufficiency. You become the wellspring instead of hoping to find one. And the practice we pair with this stance is it's slow breathing. 10 of the slowest, deepest breaths you can take. No holding, no retention, no fancy counts. Just 10 breaths. As slow and as low or full as you'll go. 2 things will happen inside of those 10 breaths. One, most people don't like to do them. It's oddly one of the practices that people tend to avoid the most, especially if they're sensitives, which is very interesting. And that's part of the whole practice. So first, on the way in, you'll start to notice tension points, finding stuck points in your body that are braced or tensed in a way that you can't really release. So it inhibits taking in full breaths. You have trouble actually expanding and dropping your belly. You can't resource if you can't receive, right? So if you notice those stuck points and you can release them, awesome. But interestingly enough, sometimes we can't consciously release yet. And we have to be able to stay with those tension points over time in this practice and work with them. Second, the second thing that's happening within this, and this is an interesting one, as the breaths get slower, the carbon dioxide held within our system increases, and you'll feel it, and you'll feel that edge of like air hunger, or the little voice that says, I need more air, speed up, except that you don't. So it'll actually feel like you're drowning or suffocating, but you're not, you're fine. And the practice is to be with that rising signal without panic. So notice what this practice is not. It is not a relaxing, slow breathing, releasing tension, being with myself practice. It's an alarm. It's triggering an alarm within the system that isn't an actual emergency, so that you learn how to be with it. This is your practice of the trap from earlier, resistance masquerading a signal. So at the scale of these breaths, every time you stay with it calmly, your system learns to read internal pressure as just signal, a thing, a signpost, instead of obeying it as, gospel truth. So that's the pairing: befriending death, horse stance. You are the asset, slow breathing. There's the physiological practices that I went through. But there's also the psyche application, which is to find places within your day, your life, your week, where you might want to just squirt away from pressure, and you practice staying, befriending death, being with a thing that makes you want to move away from it, learning to stay. Or applying you are the asset, learning how to stay intimate with a challenge and release the tension that you're aware of, that you're holding, and learn how to encourage yourself to be with something that feels very uncomfortable, even excruciating, but isn't actually dangerous. That's the pairing. So they're not, to be clear, these are not practiced together, meaning you don't practice slow breathing and horse stance at the same time. They're practiced separately, but these are 2 paired principles and practices that are artistry in building threshold capacity. The horse stance builds your capacity to stay. The breath builds your capacity to stay without depleting, to receive, to resource, and to read your own pressure. So that's how you find ease in a way that allows a harder push, not by finding relief in the moment by moving away from pressure, but by training capacity beforehand so that it's already in your body when you need it for the push. Once this interior sufficiency, this capacity is established, everything at a threshold changes. Fear stops being a threat. It just becomes information, even something to move towards, but that's a different principle. Pressure stops being something to survive. It becomes leverage, also another principle. But first, you've got to learn that you can stay. Then you learn that you are the asset, that what you need is to keep staying, is already inside of you. That's the pairing. And that's a part of how the train gets trained and then finds application points in life so that you gain intelligent expertise and experience. That's how you build the discernment, the filter, whether or not to push or to ease up, whether it's burnout or you're at a threshold. So, all of this, let's bring it home. 3 states: depletion, drift, threshold. Depletion, if real rest restores your appetite and energy, it was depletion. So rest without guilt. Second, drift, if a few corrected degrees, the artist leader spectrum brings the color back, the life back, then you've just drifted. Adjust the heading and fly on. Third, threshold. If rest doesn't touch it and the corrections do not lift your flatness, you've outgrown the destination. You're being called to evolve. And at the threshold, remember the line. Resistance masquerades as signal. The answer isn't less pressure, it's more capacity. And capacity is trainable. Stay. Become your own asset. That's what I've got for you today. So thank you for being here truly. If this video found you at the right moment, and if you recognized yourself at a threshold, or you want to learn all of these, how to train them differently, start with the Somatic Skins quiz linked below. It'll show you exactly how your system moves under pressure, and it comes with an ebook and everything that you need to begin. But if you already know that you're ready for more than just information, or you're more than just passively interested in the topic, if you want to link arms, join forces with people who are hell-bent on creating extraordinary lives, that is the work that we do at The Prestige. Reach out to us about the current season. We're having conversations now. The link is below to connect, and we will see you at your own threshold.